Wonderbuzz is sponsored by CheddarMates, the only dating app that matches people by their cheese preferences. Tired of swiping on people who don't know the difference between brie and a brick of Velveeta? Are you looking for mozzarella, but only finding the same old cheddar? Find your forever, forever, ever, forever, ever fondue. Because true love is aged, slightly funky, and best served on a cracker. Use promo code Gorgonzola to get your first date with someone who's emotionally available and lactose tolerant. CheddarMates. Cut the cheese. Together.
Welcome to another episode of Wonderbuzz. I'm your host, Nate Larson, and I'm excited to have you join me today for an exploration of curiosity, creativity, and other random stuff. Welcome, welcome. How is everyone doing out there today? If you're driving or sitting on the couch or working out or staring at the ceiling, I hope you are having a wonderful day. I do need to report in on my ongoing battle with the term game changer. The updates from the front are in, and I am losing. This week I heard about a game-changing Oreo-flavored protein powder, some Starbucks drink that was a cold brew game changer, a mattress that was a game changer for sleep technology, and pretty soon I'm sure I'm going to be hearing about game-changing shoelaces and tissue paper. I am not ready to throw in the towel just yet, and I am simply asking for your support. It would be game-changing. Okay, I usually do not record anything after I talk to guests, but I just finished my interview with Valkyrie Liles, and I had such a good time. I highly recommend you go check out HopeSprings Journal, which you can find at spidersnack.substack.com. I will put that in the show notes, but it is spidersnack.substack.com. And while we do not talk about it in detail in the interview, I knew Valkyrie very briefly many decades ago, and we even did some theater productions together, so it was really fun to catch up. I hope you enjoy the interview. I hope you check out HopeSprings Journal. Here's my interview with Valkyrie. Today's guest is Valkyrie Liles, the mind and soul behind HopeSprings Journal, a poetic punch-in-the-gut Substack about homesteading, observation, memory, solitude, wild beauty, and doing things differently. I've been catching up on all her essays, and I'm thrilled to have her on the podcast today. Valkyrie, welcome to Wonderbuzz.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I stumbled into this Substack, and I have been overjoyed that there's so much in there to go back and read. I was starting to write down little quotes or snippets of things from some of your essays that I wanted to talk to you about, and I ended up with 2 pages of quotes, which I'm not going to read back your own writing to you. But I figured it would just be easier to talk to you about it than to do anything else. So it's obvious from HopeSprings Journal that you have this incredible deep love for the homestead that you live on, for the land around you, for the lifestyle that you're leading. Can you give me a little introduction into where you live and what this place is like?
Sure. I live in Southern Oregon, pretty close to the California border, at 4,000 feet in the Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument. And a lot of people think that there's no homes in the National Monument, but there are homes that were grandfathered in when the monument was established. There's no new building though, so whatever homes exist here are the only ones here. So there's not a lot of places to live up here, but there are a few. And it's beautiful. It's boreal forest and a little bit Great Basin-y in places with red dust and buckbrush and rubber rabbit brush and some sage and that type of thing. Ponderosa forest. I'm absolutely in love with it. It's hot in the summer and cold and snowy in the winter. It's a little extreme, but I am in love with it. Absolutely.
I have a much better picture in my mind now of where you're sitting on the homestead. That's such a beautiful part of the country. I've had the chance to drive through there and spend a little time camping, and it is gorgeous. I also read in your essays, just setting the table here, about your early experiences in Alaska, and a part of your early childhood was in Alaska. And it feels like Alaska left an impression on you, both from a natural observation standpoint, but also social structures. I would love to hear about your childhood and what Alaska meant to you.
My childhood was magical, though I didn't know it at the time. We had no TV, it was pre-internet, but even more than that, we didn't have popular radio, we didn't have any satellite TV, we didn't have cable. We had to entertain ourselves, and we would fish and fillet salmon right on the shore and eat it sashimi right there. I would hike and see bears. They were all around me. I'd watch what the bears eat and think, oh, these berries must be edible, and so I wandered the forests as a young girl. The other striking thing was that there was no socioeconomic differences between a lot of us out there. It was a level playing field. Sure, some people seemed to have a little more money, expendable income, but there was nothing to buy. We didn't have malls. We didn't have any fast food restaurants. We didn't have fancy restaurants. Everybody in town ate at the same restaurant, shopped at the same grocery store, no matter who you were. So I remember being quite confused as a younger adult when I was in my later teens in high school after we'd moved, and realizing that money actually mattered. I had no idea. It was a shock to me.
I lived in some more remote places when I was younger as well, Wyoming and Utah and kind of coal mining towns and places like that. And there is an egalitarianism that's involved when there's only one company store. This is just me projecting onto your writing, so you're going to have to keep me honest during this conversation. Growing up in Alaska in such an endless, vast open space seems to have impacted this keen sense of observation that you have. I don't know if looking back on it, you think that, but in reading your writing, it seems some things started clicking there. You noticed what the bears were eating. You noticed the weather. You noticed what the salmon were doing. Do you think back on it like that?
It's very true. That is true. But I had a double whammy. I was also an only child. So I had no siblings, and my mom was a single parent who worked an awful lot. So I spent this incredible amount of time alone, more than some people would say is healthy. I became a extreme observer from this place of solitude. It still shapes me how I interact with the world. I much rather observe than interact for the most part.
Has writing always been a part of how you're processing that alone time, or did that come later in life?
Yeah, I've been writing since I was probably 7 or 8. I think as a child, especially because I did spend a lot of time alone and I didn't have anybody to bounce ideas off of. So I would pull out these spiral bound notebooks as a child. I still have some of them with weird stick drawings and stuff on them. But I think it was probably in 5th or 6th grade that I started writing poetry and feeling like this was how I was connected to the world at large. This is how I can process it, for lack of a better word. So it's always been a big thing for me. It just took until recently for me to start telling people that I was a writer, though. It was like my hidden secret.
Yeah. That happens so much with creative people. You almost begrudgingly take on those titles of writer or photographer or painter. I've talked to a lot of painters who don't call themselves painters. And I'm like, no, you're a painter. I've seen what you do. I did say I wasn't going to read your writing back to you, but there's this quote that really grabbed me. And it says, ordinary sights of a world moving too fast tended to come to me like a hammer falling in slow motion, hitting the nail perfectly every time. I love that. And I think that kind of sums up this way that you're viewing the world. It's like a fire hose coming at you, the world sometimes, and you're trying to figure out how you're going to slow that down and capture it in writing. There's another essay where you talk about just seeing water droplets running down a window. Those little moments that you can slow down and capture and expand and turn into something poetic, I think is really a big part of HopeSprings Journal. So I'm going to end the fanboy portion of my discussion with you right now. And I do want to get into, though, how HopeSprings Journal began in its current form.
I started writing on Instagram, little captions, and eventually I was like, this is not a good place. I don't own this writing. I developed a bit of a following on Instagram. It was pretty small, but I felt the love, the people that were reaching out to me. And so I heard of Substack and decided to start this. And at first it was called HopeSprings Weekly, which
Okay.
if you know me at all,
Set the expectation
Yeah.
there, huh?
I was like, okay, that's not happening. Obviously, I get too busy
Yeah.
and, and I'm also a little bit of a perfectionist about what I publish. I
Okay.
was I wasn't so much on Instagram. I would just throw a caption out there and let it fly, but when I'm writing a longer form, I do put it through some editing, not as much as some might think, but some editing. So weekly was never on the table for me. So I just changed it to
Yeah.
HopeSprings Journal, and I think it's been 3 or 4 years now that I've had that up and going, and I love doing it. It's fulfilling to me.
There's a poetic rhythm to your essays. And it has to be intentional. I just assumed you wrote a lot of poetry, or you do write a lot of poetry. You're now writing these longer form pieces. I assume you explore all kinds of different types of writing, poetry, essays. Do you go in and out of different forms at different times, or depending on the emotion you're trying to convey, a different form makes more sense?
Yeah, I thought of myself and still think of myself first and foremost as a poet.
Yes. Yeah.
But like, if you tell people you're a poet, they feel sorry for you, So I say these days I'm an essayist. I write essays. People can relate that to like the likes of David Sedaris. They can grapple with that in their mind and be like, oh, cool, I know what that is. If you say poet, they're like, are you sick?
Right. Like the food shelf is located at this address.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
totally understand.
Yeah, so I primarily write essays, and I guess I do write a bit of fiction, but I really don't enjoy it.
I want to talk to you about the homestead. How long have you been there now? How many years?
10 years.
So a decade. So this will be good. I want to walk through the 4 seasons. I almost feel like I should bring a Tibetan singing bowl right now and start a mantra. I want you to meditate on the 4 seasons with me. But I feel that, after 10 years there and probably going through all kinds of ups and downs, that each season starts to have a bit of a theme. So I'd love just to walk through the seasons and ask you some questions about the homestead.
Yeah.
So first, spring. Does it feel like new beginnings and butterflies are coming? Or do you start to think about all the things that you're going to have to do?
I guess it's a little bit of both, but the winters here are so dark and so long that it's more like this feeling of like, oh, everything isn't dead, including me.
Yes.
It feels less like new beginnings and more like the slimy bug witch emerging from the cave,
Yeah.
And the land feels that way too, because so much of the land is impassable or under snow. I mean, it's like a long sleep. So it just feels a little bit like waking up, I guess, in the spring.
Are there any first signs that let you know you've turned the corner, things that you observe year over year now that can mark spring?
Melting of snow is probably the most obvious, because once the snow melts, then I can see the little plants and things coming, little sprouts. A lot of the wild vegetation here doesn't seem phased. Manzanita puts on blooms really early, and I can start to see those forming. That's probably the earliest sign of spring, honestly. The manzanita out in the forest, they bloom before anything else, so they're putting on flowers really early.
What are some of the signs of summer on the homestead?
Well, heat. I mean, the sun. The sun up here is intense. It's high elevation sun. So even on days when it's not scorching hot, it's intense sun. And I feel like I'm always hiding from it. And the other thing about summer is the days are so long. They're too long, if you ask me. It should be dark a little earlier.
You're not a big solstice worshiper then.
Well, I do enjoy the longer days. The chickens, the plants, they all need this amount of sun. They lay better.
Yeah.
The chickens, the plants, they grow, they do what they got to do. But me, I'm at 7:30. I'm like, can it be dark now? I think I'm done with this day.
Is there a favorite harvest item that you really look forward to every summer?
Well, I'm a pickle fanatic. So cucumbers, I call them pickle plants. I don't do anything else with them but make pickles. Last year, my cucumber crop failed.
Oh.
In fact, we had a summer solstice, June 20th, hard freeze last summer.
Whoa.
And my cucumbers, they didn't make it through. I didn't have any backups. And down in town, which is about 40 minutes away, they'd already stopped selling starts because everyone had them in months prior.
Right.
Too late to start, no more seeds. So I pickled other things. I had a beet pickling festival for myself, and I'll pickle anything if I can.
The 2024 pickle famine for you.
Yeah.
That was a hard year.
Yeah, we survived. We survived.
Okay, real talk. Wonderbuzz doesn't run on likes and fermented mushroom coffee. It runs on art and listeners like you. If you want to support the show and get something beautiful in return, use promo code WONDERBUZZ at nathanlarson.com to get 20% off and free shipping on fine art prints. There is a huge and growing collection of photographs at nathanlarson.com, and they won't ask you to like, comment, or subscribe. Use promo code WONDERBUZZ today. Now back to the episode.
Does the pickling come from having favorite recipes?
It's a favorite recipe from my grandma. The bread and butter pickle is what I use. I'm not a dill fanatic. But I add my own special touch to the pickle, the bread and butter pickle recipe, which is caraway seed. So, summer's about making pickles, and I mean, just the growing stuff in the garden never ceases to be magical to me. And all of the bugs and we get really weird wasps and bugs that you've never seen anywhere else because this is a protected monument because of the biodiversity here. So we see crazy little insects and things.
Moving on to autumn then. We've got the spring with the snow melt and the plants coming out, the summer with the magic of the garden, and we have our fingers crossed for a very big pickle plant harvest in 2025. What comes to mind for you in autumn on the homestead?
Well, autumn is a relief. But also, by autumn, everything is so dry. We often go the whole summer without rain. The forest gets really dry. This is the West. We have forest fires. We have the danger of forest fires. We have drought. And by September, it's still pretty hot. By October, I'm just feeling this impending sense of I need the winter to come now. Come on, let's go. We need rain. We need snow. We need cooler temperatures. Autumn is beautiful here, but everything is brown. The ponderosas stay green, but all the fields and meadows I find out in the forest, they're all brown by that time of year. The animals look a little bedraggled out there too. The deer are like, I've had it. It's so. Autumn feels like the gateway to the season of relief in a way.
Right. We know that what's coming is wet in whatever format it's coming, so bring it on. Are there certain seasons that are more work or less work than others, or does it all just kind of feel consistent because you're in a rhythm of it year-round?
It's pretty.
I ask really hard-hitting questions. I don't know if you've noticed that yet.
Yeah, no, this is good stuff, I think. I think people want to know this stuff too, or they're curious,
They are, for sure.
It's consistent. So when we first moved up here, I was just a flurry of activity. I'm going to come up with all these amazing systems to do this and that. And I made so much work for myself trying to prove something, I think. Prove that I can do this, These days I do as little as possible. My garden is no-till. We heat with wood, so we always have this chore of firewood. But again, it's how can we make it the easiest possible, thing to do? I mean, there is a lot of work, don't get me wrong. I think the work is consistent year-round. There is always work here. But at the same time, I think I have this ease in my mind that I never had as a younger person. An ease of if it doesn't happen, it'll get done. The house isn't going to fall down while we're sleeping. Everything's okay. Everything happens in this rhythm that isn't necessarily determined by how badly I want something to get done. It happens. And I don't fret. I used to have this complicated thing to keep chicken water warm in the winter. It kept breaking, and then I was like, I got to spend another $60 to buy this heated water bowl, whatever. And then finally I was like, to hell with this. I could just smash the ice in the morning with a big stick. It's super easy, I think it's easy to overcomplicate things.
I feel like smashing things with a big stick could be the answer to a lot of homesteading problems.
Right. I just think it's funny because when I first got here, I was so overeager. I feel like I did have something to prove, and I feel like a lot of that's gone away.
Yeah. When you go into winter then, and you're just talking about how it's almost like, let's go, let's get to winter. Once you're in winter and it is dark again, we know that you like a little bit of darkness. And then you like we get some precipitation on the ground. So what comes to mind for you for winter on the homestead?
Well, I think it's my favorite season, to be honest.
Yeah.
I can go out hiking every day, even with snowshoes. And if it's just fallen snow and it's too deep or too treacherous, I can still walk the plowed highway because there's no cars really. And I always just have this amazing comfort feeling when winter is setting in. Like, it's soup season. I get to now pull from the stores of things I grew all summer. I have a big box of onions and potatoes, and I have all this stuff that I've put up and put by, and some of it's frozen. You know, I do some freezing, I do some canning, and then I do some dry storage. But I have all this stuff, and I get to create food with it all winter, and I've grown it myself, and I there's plenty of darkness in the evenings for writing, for sitting around, for knitting, doing pastel drawings, whatever whim I feel, there's time, and there's no pressure to suddenly, oh, I have to do this or I have to do that. It's just the peace and calm, the slowing down. It's my favorite season by far. And even though by February, I'm usually depressed.
But it seems like it's a predictable depression. It's coming.
It is. And, because it is predictable and I can feel it coming, and I'm like, well, sunlight would cure this. Sunlight is coming. Mm-hmm. I don't need to rush that either. Let's just take this sad time to be sad if we need to.
Sit in the sadness. You listed off a lot of other foods. I was worried that you were going to say you just sat in the darkness and ate pickles all winter. It sounds like you have a much more rounded diet than that. I'm happy to hear that.
It's pretty well rounded.
I've always been most creative. And even when I lived in cities in the middle of the night, that 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. period. And I think there's a little bit of that where everyone else is asleep and the world's a little bit quieter, and there's a similarity there with the winter season too. Thank you for walking me through the seasons of the homestead. This has been an audio journey with Nate Larson through your homestead. Tell me about your recent adventures into volunteer firefighting and your fire exposure therapy that you're giving yourself. Can you give me a little bit of context for what's going on there?
Yeah. So I am a hermit and a loner. I prefer that life. And yet, as I was sort of coming through these current times, feeling like isolation wasn't my best friend necessarily, that no one in my tiny community really knew who I was. They really don't know my substance, And I was thinking to myself, what can I do to get involved in my community that isn't the church? It isn't, and I went back to my roots in my childhood a little bit because my mom was a police dispatcher and she was a volunteer firefighter when I was a little girl. So I found out that the volunteer fire department up here was struggling for members. They had whittled themselves down to like 3 people who were trying to serve the whole community up here. So last December, I joined up and I was pretty skeptical, and I had to force myself every single Wednesday night to go to training because we did these little Wednesday night trainings, and I was like, this is crazy. I'm insane. I don't know what I'm doing, but it's so awesome. I think that maybe it's fine that I've taken this long in my life to discover the value and the joy of being a community member as opposed to this observer or lone wolf sitting on the outside looking in. So I'm doing all this crazy stuff that, sometimes I feel like I'm playing dress up in firefighter clothes.
Maybe this goes back to your roots because it's such a practical move to say you want to do something that's going to connect you to your community, but it's also of use to the people in your community. You would be called when there was real need. If you're going to have very limited human exposure as a hermit, You might as well make it exposure that helps other people.
Yeah, make it count.
I definitely am a loner as well. And I do see that it's almost an unlearning to say, like, I would need to unwind some of these habits of being the lone wolf. But it's not easy. I mean, that's a pretty big sea change, you know?
It's not easy. And I still struggle with it at times. I mean, the first time I got looped into the 911 system for the department up here, and the first time the 911 call went off, I just stared at my phone for like 4 minutes. Like, should I press the button that says I'm responding? I paralyzed like a deer in the headlights, you know.
Right.
I was like, this isn't, what am I doing? You know, I'm so glad. And I've been actually using Instagram a little bit more as a platform to push people, hopefully, to be braver if they're shying away from being involved with their communities. I'm hoping to inspire people to get active in whatever way makes sense for them. Not everyone's going to want to be putting out lightning fires like we did a couple weeks ago, but something, because there is something there that I'm just now discovering the beauty of. I feel grateful that I'm giving myself this opportunity at this stage in my life.
Yeah. And when there's times where you feel so out of control, I mean, the world feels full tilt out of control in a lot of different areas. Having the ability to really do something where you feel like you're having an impact and getting involved in whatever way it works for you is a big step a lot of people can take to combat that inertia of just feeling overwhelmed by everything that's going on.
Well, it was joining the volunteer fire department was a direct response to how out of control I felt the world was. I needed to do something that was not just observing or not just talking about it or writing about it. I had to take action. And I mean, I have neighbors that I don't get along with. We have a lot of differing views up here on the mountain. I realized that I don't need these people to be my friends, but we need to work together no matter what.
It goes back to that frontier mentality. There's an equalizer there, which is the place you live, the nature, the harshness of the environment. Doesn't really care what your political views are or what your socioeconomic status is. Everybody's got to figure out how to exist there together. Well, it's been so wonderful talking with you. I'm going to put the link to HopeSprings Journal in the show notes and make sure that people are directed towards it. I do like to end my interviews with something called quick cues. I've just written down a bunch of really random questions and numbered them. So I'll ask you to give me a number and I'll read you one of these finely crafted questions and get your hot take on it.
Okay. Number between what and what?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Instructions would help, right? That's how much time and attention I put into quick cues. Between 1 and it looks like I've written 11 questions this time. So between 1 and 11.
7.
If you had a signature candle scent, what would it be called?
Oh, gosh.
Don't say pickle.
No, it'd probably be called Ponderosa Forest.
I can almost smell it when you say it. So that's a very good one. Okay, give me another number.
3.
What is a smell that instantly takes you back to childhood?
Oh, probably a smell that takes me back to childhood. Probably the smell of stovetop stuffing. You know that?
Oh, yeah, of course.
It was so easy to make. You just added water, and I did a lot of cooking on my own, so it was something that I could make. I could make for myself that felt grown up, you know?
Mm-hmm. It felt like a fancy meal when you added some stovetop stuffing. Yeah, that's amazing. So when you wanted to treat yourself, it was like, hey, tonight's a stovetop night. Everybody get ready.
Yeah.
Okay, give me another number.
Let's see. 9.
9. Okay. What is one thing that people romanticize about homesteading that is total BS?
They and me, we romanticize everything because it's how you cope with the reality. I think that everything's pretty, for one. Everything is not pretty. There is a lot of poop and dirt and death and sadness out when you get really close to the land. But I think that romanticizing it is how many people deal with the dark side, I guess, you know? So
yeah.
And goats. Don't ever get goats. Goats are
really anti-goat?
Well, okay, I love them. They have personalities and everything, but everybody I know that's had goats, they say never again will they ever have goats. And they break out of things. Everyone who has goats are pulling their hair out with the antics of the goats. So, and I think
Yes, they're trouble. They're always in some kind of trouble.
and the baby goats are what make people think that it's a good idea.
Yes. There's too many reels on Instagram of baby goats and yoga. What is that? Goat yoga? I don't know if you've seen those.
I have.
Yeah. I was taking photos of a donkey yesterday for a project I'm working on, and I realized that I romanticized donkeys. I thought,
Well, I think we all do it to some degree.
yeah, I have a vision of a little farm in my head, and then sometimes I'll do these farm projects for photography clients, and I'll be like, probably not as sexy as I think it is.
Yeah, it's not. It's not sexy.
All right, let's do one more bonus. Let's do one more bonus number.
Okay.
Give me one more number.
10.
10. All right. You've done so well in your volunteer firework, you have been asked to staff a fire tower for a month. For a hermit, that would be like a promotion, right?
Yeah.
You can only bring one album with you. What is it going to be?
One album to staff a fire tower for the month. Do you know the artist Fink?
Yeah, of course. Sure.
So I can't remember which album it is, but it's the one with Yesterday Was Hard on All of Us. You know that song?
Yes. Yes.
That would be the album.
Just hanging in your fire tower with Fink
Yep.
and pickles.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, I don't know if you remember, we were in a regional theater production together. We were working on Greater Tuna. Does that take you back at all?
Oh, yeah. Those are happy memories.
And one day you went out to get pizza and you went to Little Caesars, because it's the best pizza around. And we also had live goldfish in this play for some stupid reason. And you went out to get some replacement fish for the play. So you came back with the pizza and the goldfish in a bag. And through some series of events, something happened when we were all sitting there in the office getting ready to eat the pizza where the bag broke and the fish ended up on the pizza. I don't know if you remember this.
I do not.
So the two goldfish were kind of flopping around on the pizza, and we, after being in shock for a second, took them off the pizza and got them back in their bag with cheese and stuff dragging around on them. And then, of course, we ate the pizza because, we're hungry and that was probably all of our money.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then that night when we were performing the play, the other guy that was in the play with me, Deacon, and I were looking at these fish in the first act and we're like, these are never going to make it through this evening's production. These Little Caesars goldfish are going to be dead by Act 2. So I was thinking about that before our call today. It was just such a funny little memory.
I mean, now that you mentioned it, I feel like I have this vague memory, but there were so many memories. And of course, now I feel like some of them are definitely lost. I actually appreciate you bringing that memory back because those were good times. Those were good times.
They were good times.
Yeah.
I loved being in the theater. Well, it's been so wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much. And I hope that HopeSprings Journal is something that you keep putting out there in the world. And I would love to see a collection of your essays someday. It would just be cool to see a book. So I'm going to manifest that on your behalf, even if it's not one of your dreams.
No, I appreciate that. It is one of my dreams. I just, I have no idea exactly how to go about it. I've been looking into it. But thank you for the manifestation. Thank you so much for having me on. This has been awesome. I really, really had a good time.
Thank you so much, Valkyrie. Thanks for joining me on another episode of Wonder Buzz. As always, I really appreciate you listening and sharing your thoughts and feedback with me. If you want to see more of my photography, head over to nathanlarson.com. If you're more of a what's it feel like when the world is burning and everyone is just posting about their brand deals, you can follow me over on Instagram at Nathan Larson Photo. Send comments and questions to podcast@nathanlarson.com. And I would really appreciate if you would rate and review and share Wonder Buzz with your friends. It'll really help people find the episodes and learn more about the show. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and I will see you on the next episode of Wonder Buzz.